Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, Expediting Lateral Hiring, Integrated Onboarding, and Conflicts Clearance. I'm Bryn Bowen. I'm the practice group lead for legal risk here at Intapp, and the person who will actually take you through the demo is Christian Ugla, our senior sales engineer. Let's define the problem. Law firms are experiencing the most active period of lateral lawyer movement, and this is for both associates and portable matter partners, in history. There is no sign of abatement in the near term. Currently, firms have processes that vary widely for ingesting and onboarding laterals. Major pain points center around the effective upstream capture of vital personal, professional, and client matter information. We know that your risk teams are facing pressures as your firms continue to grow and compete for business and face increasing client demands through OCGs. So whether you're growing through mergers or lateral hires, risk teams critical to analyzing and resolving potential risks and conflicts associated with that growth. Some of the challenges, as many of you know, are increasing volumes and complexities of assessments. And very often these include identifying the need for ethical walls to address the potential conflicts and imputation issues, which are becoming more and more intransigent. And then creating those walls prior to the lateral joining, also becoming a key element of this process. So because of the competitive environment for good, solid laterals, and because of the financial pressures that firms face, we are seeing that the firms are actually becoming more holistic in their evaluation of risk. So for portable clients, beyond analyzing whether a firm can take on the business, i.e. clear conflicts, firms are actually starting to assess whether they should take on the business. Is the client or the work aligned to the firm's strategy? Is it priced to be profitable? Is there financial risk? Can we properly resource the work that will ultimately result in positive outcomes, delighting the client and protecting the firm's reputation? To make these decisions, there is a need to internally communicate effectively with all relevant background information at hand. Adding to that, the need to onboard these laterals quickly, efficiently, and in a compliant manner compounds the stress, as if risk groups didn't already have hard jobs. Let's look at the proposed way to address these issues through our data integration and workflow capabilities. As we have with all of our product development, we've worked with our clients to develop a solution based on best practices across the industry. The lateral hire solution. This is an out-of-the-box, low-impact, implementation-friendly tool for efficiently evaluating and ultimately onboarding laterals. It's available both as an accelerator, best practice-based template, as well as a customizable centralized solution. And what we've seen are lateral hire solution clients accelerating business acceptance, shortening the time ultimately to billing and collection, which of course is the ultimate goal. Risk can be monitored and escalated through notifications and downstream integrations to avoid reputational and financial damage. In a minute, Christian will actually demonstrate how all this works. We'll go from initiating the candidate, having the candidate enter and submit their information remotely. Then the firm does its risk and conflict checks and analysis. And now this information will be available for setting up new clients and matters for a lateral on day one, which is crucial. I would add that with the appropriate optional integrations with our walls, terms, and time products, and of course, integration of our online data products for family tree assessment, a completely seamless and compliant configuration for ingesting and onboarding laterals is actually possible. To wrap up, our lateral hire clearance solution provides a facility for the proposed lateral to communicate what they need for proper evaluation, a central place for all of the firm's internal stakeholders and decision makers to view and evaluate the full package of information, a platform to quickly and compliantly onboard laterals and any portable associated clients and matters. And of course, as mentioned, with the optional terms, walls, time, and data tie-ins, tremendously streamline what would normally be a burdensome effort. So I think we're ready to take a look at the product. Christian, take it away.
A key point that I want to talk about that we haven't really addressed yet is the way that this actually operates. This actually includes what we call our external tenant for collaboration. And what that basically means is your laterals that you'll be inviting to fill out these forms won't be coming into your on-prem environment or even to your actual firm's tenant in the cloud. This accelerator can help you and can integrate with that regardless of what model you're currently implemented under. And the way that it works is there's an additional external tenant that's created for you in the cloud, regardless of whether you're on-prem or, again, have implemented your system in the cloud. And this tenant is independent of your environment. So this allows you to invite those external users to come in, fill out a form, give you the information required. It actually allows you to submit that form from that external tenant, and it will go through integration points and push that data into your environment, be that on-prem or your own cloud implementation. So those external users will never have access to your data. They'll never be invited directly into your systems. But as the process goes through integration, it will behave and feel like they're in your environment, but they will, in fact, have no access to your information whatsoever. So from a security standpoint, you're not inviting those users into your actual environments itself. And so the way that this will behave is from your internal instance, you can actually initiate this request. And here we have a form where we're initiating that candidate. We can fill out some basic fields of information, the candidate's name, their email address, and sponsoring lawyer. And when we submit this form, it'll actually go through a step where someone is reviewing and approving it. But what happens after the fact is that user is then created for you automatically in that external tenant, and an email is generated and sent to that candidate, inviting them to log in and fill out the information that you're requesting. They click the link in their email, and they're presented with this candidate details form. And this is part of our accelerator that can be used to implement this very quickly. And here we have a robust form where we're asking the candidate very specifically for their details, positions that they might be applying for, the practice group, the office, lots of the information surrounding the candidate, what they're coming on specifically to do, contact information here. And then we start getting into a bunch of background information where we're collecting information around their education. And again, we can collect all of their degrees, all of their areas of study. And then the form itself right now is already set to be fully expanded, but it's asking them questions around whether they received honors or not. And here you can see if I say no, that section disappears. If I say yes, that section is here where we can capture what those honors specifically are. Same thing, we're talking about law reviews. And then we get into additional sections here around work experience. And this is where we get into even more of the history of this potential candidate. We've got their work history, their dates of employment, positions held, reason for leaving. We can collect all of that, whether they have any clerkships or externships specifically, and the data for collecting those. And all of this data that we're collecting is going to be gathered up and factor into those conflict searches that we need to be doing. Additionally, going down further, we can see asking the questions about fiduciary positions. And then we have a whole section very specifically around legal experience, bar memberships, professional affiliations here, and then we can get into organizations that they're a part of and they hold some specific roles in, and then their past work experience, specifically in the last 5 years. And this is where we can start collecting very specifically those matters and clients that they've been engaged with either historically or those matters and clients that they might be bringing with them. If they're a lateral partner, they may have work that they're looking to bring with them, and they can specifically indicate that when they're spelling out a client, the description of the work, the parties that were involved in that, whether it's a portable matter or not is going to be a key factor in how we handle that downstream as this is processed. So the candidate goes through this, and by the way, any of the information that we're feeding can be applied from a file that's being uploaded, but very specifically all of that work experience related to their matters and clients, they can actually upload that from a file if they'd rather do that rather than having to fill these out individually. While the form is quite lengthy and there's lots of information that we can be gathering as they're filling the form out, everything is saved. So if it takes them multiple times coming in and out, it's going to keep track of all of the information that they've entered. Nothing will be lost, regardless of whether they accidentally close the browser window or let it time out. So it'll gather all of that data. Once they've completed filling out the form, they can submit that. And what actually happens at that moment from a integration standpoint between systems is all of this data now passes through those integration points and now updates your internal instance of this same process. So the information that they filled out now flows into your environment, updating your view of that. And your users actually have the ability to look at, review the form, and if there's information that's missing, maybe the descriptions for the matters are lacking and you need some more detail, you actually can push this form back out to that lateral, back out to that external environment with your comments. And you can go back and forth as much as you need to until this form is completed to satisfaction and you have the information you need. And when they submit the form back to you, what's happening in that external environment is that user's access is actually deactivated. Their user is inactive, and then, of course, if you push it back out to them, it's reactivated. But they won't even be able to get into that external environment unless you're specifically asking them to fill out and provide some information. Once this form's been completed to your satisfaction and you approve it to move down the line, it'll actually advance to a point in the process where we're getting conflicts involved. And we've got a couple aspects here. Number one, we'll jump into the conflicts search part of this. We can create as many searches as we need to based on how they've filled out that lateral form. And here, if we open this up, you can see two searches have been created in this instance. We have one portable matter that they indicated, and so we have a search for that individual matter, and then everything else is going into that personal conflict search. So that would be their non-portable matters, all of their affiliations and organizations and things that they've worked on in their past can come into that personal conflict search. And so if this same user had 7 portable matters, we would see 7 searches, one for each of those portable matters, and then one additional search for the catch-all of everything else that's not being pulled in. And this just allows us to address those conflicts, but very specifically address those matters that we're looking to bring over to the form, to the firm individually, clearing them, going through that, and then those same searches can be used when the lateral comes on board to actually onboard their matter, really expediting that process greatly and allowing those matters to be created in a much more timely fashion. Going through that conflicts process, reviewing that, generating your searches will be much the same as what you're doing today, except for our ability to divide those things into individual searches for you specifically. And then going back to the request form, if you are indicating certain portable matters and their overall status, whether we can have them continue downstream and go through an intake process. Again, we can integrate that with your systems in-house. And then if you have our walls product, we can actually be integrating right from this accelerator as well to either create policies or update policies as needed as it relates to the onboarding of this particular lateral. And once we've gotten through that conflicts process and done all the things that we need to do, whether it's walls, whether it's indicating how we've handled those portable matters, we can then advance the process through whatever reviews and approvals needed, but ultimately then ending at the termination point where we're informing HR that we have cleared this lateral and are ready to actually bring them in as an employee. That's the termination point of our process. If we look at that activities tab, you can see again all of these points because this is an accelerator that we can actually implement into your environment at a greatly reduced cost and time frame so you can get up and running. And you can see all of these points. We didn't go through all of them in the demonstration, but we can see initiating the request, those integration points, again, as I mentioned, where we're creating those users in the external environment, the candidate completing the form from that external instance, and then them submitting it, going through integration, and then updating the candidate details in our internal environment. And then once we've approved the form, again, it's creating those searches from the data that we've collected, going through that conflicts resolution process, the sponsor review, and then ultimately ending here. that HR processing step. That gives you a high-level overview of that accelerator. Be happy to have conversations with any and all of you that wish to see a deeper view of that, and we can set those things up individually.
How does the upload file complete client matter information? How does it automatically fill in the form? We generally provide a template, but it's really up to the candidate to provide that information in any of the easy ways we make available. Of course, we do know that there are some laterals who will not do this themselves, the big client and matter bearing partners that your firm has managed to land. And so there is the option, of course, to offer that person white glove service so that they are not the ones who necessarily need to fill out the client matter information. They can provide your team or a member of your team with all of that information. The key being that it's all then centrally input and available further downstream for leveraging. Does the software permit editing of the requirements for conflict clearance? The lateral hire software, the conflict software, obviously, you can change it to make it obey whatever your firm rules are. So that's the qualified answer to that first part of the question, provided that conflict software is Intapp conflicts. When a candidate uploads a document, is there a prompt to what types of documents are permitted?
Typically, we provide a template, so you can see on the screen that I'm sharing right now, specifically for this section of information, they can actually download a template here. Additionally, you can use this template itself and even further enhance that if you want to put in more drop-down or macro type of information in there to expedite it, and you could supply the template ahead of time. But it's a specific template that would be loaded in here for them to consume all of the data related to this grid.
Is there a guide for candidates who understand what is required when providing the information? Yeah, so you can actually create instructions for candidates who are filling these things out, prompting them to fill them out properly.
And you can see we have help built in. So anything here, if they don't know what firm involved means, there's the question mark there, letting them know what are we specifically asking for. So that's included throughout the entire form, the additional prompts and explanations.
Do you have an example of what the matter information looks like once a candidate is cleared?
If you're talking about those portable matters, it's going to be any other search basically that you're running in your system as part of your new matter intake process. If you're running a conflict search with that, this will be exactly like those searches. What we're doing is just creating multiple searches and linking them to the request here. So you'd have as many searches as need be, but each one of these would be just like any other search that you've created for any matter that you're onboarding. The key difference here is they're all linked to this lateral instead of individual matter requests. But downstream of that, you could link to and use these searches for those new matters as you're onboarding them. And depending on the lag time between when you cleared that matter for the lateral and when they actually come on board and request the matter to be open, you may be rerunning that search. But again, it's going to expedite that process greatly because now you're only needing to really address any new hits that have come up as a result of that lag versus running the whole process again, running a new search and clearing that same matter.
When the candidate is formally onboarded, do the portable matter searches kick off new business requests for those matters?
So you could indicate which ones you want to create an intake request. So as these portable matters come in, you can be selecting them, indicating here within the form, and then that can link to and initiate whatever intake process you want them to be tied into, and that'll be an integration point that's part of the implementation.
Interesting question. Is this mostly for larger firms? In fact, it's for firms that have any sort of serious volume of lateral movement, particularly for mid-sized firms who may not have the robust staffing in their risk groups. This is actually very crucial, being able to automate a lot of this process and completely streamline it. So the answer to the question is no, it is definitely not mainly for large firms. Where are the search terms being pulled from? Are they user-generated? Yes. If you're using Intapp conflicts, there is a much more fulsome answer to that question. There is a lot of functionality within the conflicts module that you can be making use of just on a standard day-to-day basis without being part of a lateral onboarding process. And if you contact your managing director, we'd be happy to show that to you. Did I hear you say that if we want to do more with the lateral hire solution, can we expand to integrate our other systems like HRIS?
It can be integrated with any systems you want from that standpoint. The key here is that the accelerator that we're talking about, there's different implementation models for it. So definitely take it off the shelf as it is, and we can implement it and configure it. And that's going to be obviously the fastest implementation and cheapest, or at least expensive implementation. But this can also be used as a blueprint. And so from that scenario, we can then expand upon and alter and change that blueprint and scope that out as part of the implementation. And of course, there'll be additional hours and effort involved in that, and so additional costs. But you're definitely not limited as to what you can do. This is really meant to be, number one, an example of what you can do using these environments and this external collaboration, but also a very specific example that you could implement or that we could use as a blueprint for that implementation and as the basis, and then expand upon as needed to meet your specific requirements.
Once the candidate submits the form, do they have the ability to make an edit, add information to the form, absent the review team sending that back to them?
If the user submits the form, we're locking them down. We're preventing them from making changes to that because we don't want that data coming in unbeknownst to those folks. They could email you that information, and of course you could just add that into the search because you have full edit capabilities with that. But you could always push it back out to them and have them enter any information needed. But it's very specifically designed, at least the accelerator is, to support the model of we're in control of when we're gathering data from them, versus them just being able to, unbeknownst to us, just start entering in additional information. And of course, we have to integrate that external environment into the internal one very specifically.
Is there capability to export the information to a PDF chart or other sort of chart format? In other words, is there a capability to report on what has been submitted? The short answer to that is yes. Can the lateral secretary complete the form? Yes. Is it possible to give them access? Yes. Can we see what an actual conflict check looks like? Are party cards created for the names of clients and adverse parties to be searched?
Yes, it's doing exactly what you're doing today. We're just using your conflict system. You can see the searches that are created here. If I want to jump between those searches, if I jump to the personal conflict search, for instance, we can see what the specific strategy is here, the entities that were entered. So yes, you can see those cards. It's creating the searches just like any other search.
Can documents related to anti-money laundering also be attached to the form? Yes, you can attach anything that relates to assessing whether or not your lateral candidate is right for your firm.
That's another use case for that external collaboration. It might be for your AML processes for specifically collecting that documentation, another type of scenario outside of the lateral world and accelerator that I'm demonstrating here.
Is there a limit to the number of portable matters that can be uploaded by the candidate? No, although we haven't tested millions, but I'm sure there isn't.
Yeah, we can bring as many in as needed.
In the event one client matter was not cleared to move to your firm out of 5, when that candidate joins the firm, are you able to omit that specific matter from the forms that we are deployed to? Yes. The short answer is yes. You determine which matters are actually going to be portable, or which clients and matters are actually going to be portable. Can the candidate print the full form report before submitting? Once again, yes, there's a canned report, but you can also customize that. How do we get access to this pre-built form for laterals? Just reach out to account support rep or your managing director? Absolutely. They are standing by the phones right now waiting for your call. I assume we can make the searches confidential so they don't appear to others. Yes, that's a function of our conflict system, or a feature, I should say, of our conflict system. Will the parties run in the searches show as hits when running conflicts for new matters in the firm? If so, what will it show up as?
It will show up as a pass search. So if you're trying to bring in a lateral and at the same time someone else in the firm is trying to bring in a matter that's going to make that lateral's portable matter a conflict, you'll be able to raise that just like you would with any other matters you're searching where people are trying to come in on opposite sides of the same matter. That'll be surfaced as a past search hit and link specifically back to that lateral candidate.
Here's a good one. Can the candidate save the form and return later to complete the form? So yes,
Yes.
they don't actually have to save it. It's saved as they're working on it. So yes, definitely. Here's a great question. Can the workflow and form be customized to incorporate other onboarding tasks? For example, once a candidate is approved, an office needs to be assigned, various HR forms need to be completed, billing rates need to be established, et cetera, et cetera. So the answer is yes, but this is not the out-of-the-box solution that we're offering.
Any data that's being captured in this can flow into any other process that you have because it's all in our same solution, all in the same environment. So none of the data would necessarily be lost as you move from this process to a new matter form. We can bring any and all data into that downstream request.
Are all notes copied over from the lateral form to the new matter form? If you designate that, yes. But I think there is certainly for clearance notes that those enter into the normal conflict clearance regime. So the answer is yes and yes. Does the external tenant allow electronic signatures?
No, we don't have e-signature as part of our solution specifically. We can collect information. Obviously, you can have them type their name in a box indicating that they're signing or something along that, but it's technically not a digital signature. That said, we could integrate this solution with something like DocuSign if you wanted to send them a formal document that they needed to digitally sign and those sorts of things, and we could even pull that digitally signed document into this request. But that would be additional configuration within the solution.
Can you explain the AI aspect? I'm assuming that that's the AI aspect of our advanced conflicts engine.
I would suggest you reach out to your MD and get a demonstration scheduled for that, and we could go through what that artificial intelligence component of our conflict solution looks like.
Can we limit internal users from accessing certain sections? Yes. Short answer, yes. Access rights management is a key and integrated part of any Intapp solution. What happens if a lateral does not end up joining? Will all of the portable, non-portable matters the lateral submitted during their candidacy automatically be excluded from future conflict check results? Yes, if you want them to be. Basically, your firm is in control of what happens, how those are disposed of, and over what period of time, for example. You mentioned earlier that this can be integrated with walls. What sort of information would be passed from the lateral intake process into walls?
That could be clients having to be screened from, matters specifically that they may need to be screened from. As part of that lateral process, through the conflict searching and whatnot, you're going to uncover areas where you maybe need to be implementing a wall specifically to be able to bring that in. Some exclusionary walls, things that they're going to have to be walled off from, you can just designate what those are. If there's existing policies that can be updated, it will then create those exclusionary walls for you as you indicate what you need within the request form itself.
I'm trying to wrap my head around the potential risks of guiding the hands of lateral candidates, especially member candidates who have partnership agreements with their current firms, where we're asking for information about their firm's clients and essentially taking those clients away from the competing law firms. Is there anything we need to consider in that regard? Let's put it this way. There is absolutely no way you can do a proper risk evaluation on a lateral without understanding what work they've done and for whom. And so every firm has, in effect, to answer the subtext of your question, been able to, or their risk departments have been able to view the clients and matters of other firms as they relate to that particular lateral. There's absolutely no way you can do this process without actually having access to that information. And I think that will be our last question. Thank you all so much for attending. It's been a pleasure, and hopefully it's been illuminating for you all. And have a great rest of the day.